wave if you're still awake.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a race from the front. Kia ora everyone, I'm here to introduce Dan Marsden, who is working for Catalyst. Yep, pretty much looks like that, doesn't it? He's going to be talking about SCORM, which is not some sort of dreaded skin disease, not at all, but is something that we could well be interested in terms of using SCORM and Moodle. So thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you. Well, yeah, some of you might know already, but my name's Dan Marsden. I've been working with Moodle for about 8 years as a developer, previously working at Lincoln University in Christchurch, and now working for Catalyst IT. I'm the core component lead in Moodle for the plagiarism API, the choice module, and the SCORM module, which means that if there are any changes to occur to those areas of Moodle, then they need to go via my approval first, so I have to review that change. And it also means that I've contributed a lot in those areas. I'm a senior developer at Catalyst, working from my home office in Christchurch, so I don't work out of a Catalyst office, I work from my home. We've got a young family of 5 kids, which keep me on my toes, so it works out quite well being able to work from home and work around their needs. Justin Whitney, Tori Larissa Malia, that's who I am. SCORM. Now I presume there are a few people here that don't know what SCORM is, so this is just a definition that's available. It's a package and a collection of information that allow you to reuse web-based learning content and provide that to learners via a learning management system. And that learning management system could be Moodle, it could be Blackboard, WebCT, it could be anything that supports the SCORM standard. So another way to look at SCORM is that we have this learning management system over here, and we have this package of learning that we want to provide. So the learning management system just says start, and the learner's name is Jan. And the web package over here says it's 50% complete, and the user got 8 out of 10, and I'm now done. And that's kind of how SCORM works. It's just this external learning package, and it communicates with the LMS or Moodle, and Moodle provides some information, and it provides some information back to Moodle. Really basic, high level. These slides are available too, so after the conference is finished, all of the stuff's up on the site. Important to say that Moodle doesn't generate SCORM content. You can't create a SCORM package with Moodle. Moodle only presents SCORM packages to learners and saves that information in terms of the interactions back into the SCORM package. If you want to create SCORM content and you're not sure what package to use, there's a site on, there's a page on the Moodle site. I presume it's coming up. No, it's not there. I will copy it. Here we go. And this page lists a bunch of different packages that you can use to, where's the zoom on this? Oh, there's 2, yeah, I'm not used to. Here we go, that's probably a bit better. So this page just lists a bunch of different packages that are available for creating content. Some of them are open source, like these ones here. There's AICC, which was originally developed by University Auckland. Does anyone know Auckland University? Yeah, Auckland University. And is now maintained quite a lot by some people in Spain. Someone else. There's another developer that's taking up a lot of the development there, and there's a few other open source ones there. And then there's some other free ones that you can download but aren't open source. But the most common ones I see are Articulate and Captivate, and those are very common commercial. They cost a wee bit of money, but they're the most commonly found. I see a few people putting their hands up saying that's what they use. So yeah, Moodle doesn't create any of that content. I'll go back. So there's a lot of SCORM content around from external learning package providers. Skillsoft's a large company that has a lot of content packages available you can go and purchase. So if you want to teach your staff how to use Microsoft Office, you could go to Skillsoft and say, can I have a Microsoft Office package, and you could purchase that learning content. And that content is provided as a SCORM package because Skillsoft can give that to Moodle users, they can give that to Blackboard users, they can give it to WebCT, or anyone that has a SCORM compliant learning management system. So it's quite a nice way of providing content that isn't tied down to Moodle. So if you're contracting an external person to create content, then it's used a bit. There are 4 different versions of SCORM. And I use that word versions a little bit loosely because one that's here isn't really a version of SCORM. SCORM 1.2 is the main original version that's created. It's a very basic specification that basically allows for user... it's the basic version. We'll get into a bit more of it later. AICC is developed for predominantly for the aviation industry. And it is very similar to SCORM in the way some of it works, but it's a different method of communication. SCORM 2004 is not supported in Moodle, and 2004 is the year that it was released, so you can see that we're quite a wee way behind the times in that particular version. It's quite a complex specification, and the biggest part of it that adds on top of SCORM 1.2 is something called sequencing and navigation, which basically allows you to have a tree structure of content and allow different access to different parts of the content depending on what they have done on previous pages. So it's kind of branching, sequencing, it allows a bit of navigation. And Moodle doesn't support it, and we'll talk a bit about that soon. And the new version is this thing called the Experience API, which was previously known as TinCan, and that's a very new way of looking at SCORM. And also contains a large range of other specifications that do other things around logging and other areas that aren't necessarily a SCORM package. So SCORM 1.2, when the SCORM code went into Moodle at about Moodle 1.5 and it languished and wasn't very well supported for quite a long time, the original developer who spent lots and lots of time on it left the community and went to do other things. So the support and maintenance of the SCORM module pretty much died. Moodle HQ tried to contract a number of organisations to improve that support. They started around when Moodle 1.8 was released. They tried to contract a few organisations and really struggled to find someone that was able to take care of SCORM and its complexities. And when about sort of Moodle 1.9.4, we put our hands up at Catalyst and said, hey look, this is something that is needed for some of our clients, we could probably do it, and Moodle HQ provided some funding to allow us to complete the SCORM 1.2 specification in 1.9.5. So in 1.9.5 we sent Moodle to ADL, who are the certification body for SCORM. We sent Moodle to them and said, here you go, we've made it pass all of the specification, can you go and test it? And they put their rubber stamp on it and said, yes, Moodle is now certified SCORM compliant. But we haven't done that since Moodle 1.9.5. It hasn't been a need for most people. No one's really wanted something that has that rubber stamp, and there's a cost associated with it. So because no one's really pushed us to say, hey, go and get some compliance, or go and get certification, we haven't done it since. But it still complies. It still passes all those tests and still is there, and we're hoping. I'm bugging the HQ guys to do it for Moodle 2 at some point, because Moodle 1.9 is no longer supported. We can't really say Moodle's certified compliant when we're saying we've only certified it for an old version. So we're going to do that again. All the current stable versions comply with the 1.2 spec. So it passes and it works, should work mostly. AICC is, as I said, developed mainly for the aviation industry, so lots of pilot training material is available as AICC packages. It has some different ways of communicating. It has a server-client sort of model where you can have your learning package sitting on a server over here and Moodle sitting on a server over here and connecting to that AICC package and communicating information across. So the content isn't on your Moodle server, it's on some external system. Whereas the other systems, the content sits within Moodle. Moodle 2.4 has a couple of bugs with AICC handling at the moment, so if you're using AICC it's good to keep an eye on those. And we've never done any certification for AICC, we've just never had anyone actually ask us to do it, and it doesn't seem to get a lot of use. It does get a bit of use for people that are Skillsoft customers, because they have quite a large range of AICC material available, and it works okay for them. So Skillsoft occasionally will report bugs to us, and we'll fix them relatively quickly. So there's no major issues with AICC at the moment, other than that particular bug, which is just it should be an easy fix. Just haven't done it yet. Toward 2004. SCORM 2004 has never been completed in Moodle. Part of it has been implemented. SCORM 1.2 has 2 test packages that you use to certify that it's compliant. SCORM 2004 has 189 packages to certify that it is compliant, and we passed 2. It took us, when we took over Moodle when we took over SCORM for the ADL 1.2 requirements, it took us about 3 months to get Moodle up to scratch and pass those 2 tests. To pass 189 tests is going to take significantly more amount of time. Google Summer of Code, GSOC, is a project that's run by Google every year that provides funding for students to work on open source projects. So the last 2 years I've run GSOC projects and I had two students last year working on SCORM, and 1 the year before, who've been making slow improvements to the architecture that will hopefully allow us to improve the number of tests we've done. Last year the student allowed it to pass those 2 tests, so previously we were passing, I think we passed 1 previously but had broken it due to other code that had gone in. We really need about 3 to 4 months worth of work from an experienced Moodle developer to progress SCORM to a point where it's SCORM 2004 to a point where it's actually doing well. And 3 to 4 months is a significant investment for most organisations. So I get emails probably about once a week asking about the status of SCORM 2004, and my response is normally, how much money are you willing to put towards the project? And I get responses anywhere between $50 to $1,000, and that's just not coming close to the amount of funding required for 3 to 4 months. So what I'm hoping to do at some point is to look at doing a crowdfunding project to do this, because I've had lots of contact from people saying, we want SCORM 2004. I don't know if they really want it for a checkbox or whether it's something they really want to use. That's the other problem with SCORM 2004, is that it's quite often used as a checkbox in RFPs or proposals from companies that are wanting an LMS. So they go and create, this is what we need, you know, and then one of those checkboxes is SCORM 2004. But the reality is most of the content they create doesn't actually require to SCORM 2004, but it's one of those checkboxes in an RFP. So you have to try and fulfill some of those things. So that might happen sometime this year. I'm still in the process of working out how that might look. We've had at least 1 crowdfunding project for Moodle run recently that was a much smaller scale of about $800, I think it was. Not sure if anyone here knows. Stuart, do you remember anything about? There was a crowdfunding project recently run for an improvement, but it was about $800 target or something small. It was a very small scale. This is likely to be around the $40,000 plus, potentially, depending on... the other problem with crowdfunding is you also have to include freebies to engage people and get them to provide funding. So a lot of the crowdfunding projects will give away a t-shirt or a sticker or various merchandise based on what level you provide funding at. So that has to be incorporated into the price of the project as well. And it's likely that 3/4 months wouldn't complete SCORM 2004. I mean, there are 189 tests we have to pass, and each one of those test packages are quite a range of tests. So it could take me 5 minutes to go through 1 test manually, individually, so it's quite a time-consuming process. Tin Can is this new version of SCORM. Tin Can spec was developed by a company called Rustici, who are SCORM experts and have a range of SCORM experience. It's the new version. Not very many LMSs provide support for it, or authoring packages. The newer versions of Captivate and Articulate do export Tin Can, as far as I'm aware, but you have to have the latest version. I'm a wee bit disappointed about some of the work that's been done on Tin Can. The SCORM module and code is not a very good example of quality code in Moodle. There are quite a large range of quality issues with the code. Reliability is a problem, stability is a problem, and there's a lot of legacy information and code in there that just doesn't work. So what I was hoping to happen is that someone would fund or start on a new Moodle module for Tin Can. They wouldn't use SCORM because the SCORM stuff really needs a lot of work to be a viable solution. And if we were able to start clean with a nice clean interface, it would become a lot more reliable and stable. But there's a guy in the community who's started to build Tin Can support on top of the existing SCORM module. And I've said a few times, look, I don't want to do it that way, but it seems to be getting a bit of traction, and I think I'll probably just have to bite the bullet and look at integrating it into the SCORM module. But that needs some more funding to help spend, to spend some time on working on that. And there is some proof of concept code in that Moodle tracker item. That's a Moodle tracker ID number if you haven't seen one of them before. MDL prefix and then the ID number. So if you just search for that in Google, it'll bring it up, and these slides are available. So. And the other thing with Tin Can is there are lots of different areas of this new specification that don't necessarily reflect just our learning package. So one of the specifications in Tin Can is a learning package like SCORM, and there's a bunch of other specifications that a learning management system could implement around logging and displaying of other information as well. So it's quite a detailed spec that in time Moodle might implement some of those things, maybe. Worth pointing out that there's this Rustici SCORM Cloud, which is available. Rustici are very well-known SCORM experts, and they help develop the Tin Can module. They have a commercial SCORM Cloud that provides full support for Tin Can, full support for SCORM 2004, and there's a Moodle plugin to connect to the Rustici SCORM Cloud. So, if you need SCORM 2004 compliance and have some funding, but don't have 4 months worth of funding, you can budget in a contract with Rustici and use their SCORM engine and have SCORM 2004 certified compliance within Moodle. And it's a very stable player, very reliable. They have in the past contracted Catalyst to work on their Moodle plugin. They're quite aware that they're SCORM experts and not Moodle experts, so I wanted to make sure that the Moodle plugin is stable and most usable as possible for Moodle users. So that's always quite quick to update too with new versions, and the service is really good too compared to some of the other commercial organisations I work with that have plugins with Moodle like Turnitin. Rustici are really good to work with, and the service has been quite good. And I don't get any funding from them, so this is not there's no commercial benefit to me selling you this. It'll be more beneficial for me to get you to pay for the SCORM 2004 compliance work. In SCORM Moodle, there are a range of ways of managing your package files. Cool. Since Moodle 2.4, you've been able to drag a zip file from your desktop straight into your Moodle course, and a pop-up window appears and says, would you like to add this as a resource? Would you like to add this as resource, as a folder, or a SCORM package? And if you choose SCORM package, it just appears on your course and you don't do anything else. It's just done. You just drag the zip over and it works. Uploaded package is kind of the same as drag and drop. In fact, there's the drag. You have to turn anything on first too. Uploaded package is the same method that's used for drag and drop, and it's the only method enabled by default on your install plus drag and drop. It gives you the standard file picker, so everyone that's used Moodle here has probably seen the file picker in Moodle 2. Lets you go and find the zip file and then click OK, and it just adds to your course. So that's the easiest way, and it's enabled by default. The other options that I'm going to show you all require configuration. So I'll just go to oh no, I should go demo because we have it works. To enable these other options of managing the SCORM packages, you have to go to the admin settings. So I've opened this and over you go. So in the settings block under site administration, under plugins, activity modules, there's an option for SCORM package. And in that page down the bottom somewhere here is the admin settings. You've got external package, enable downloaded package type, enable IMS package type, enable direct ICC URL, and external AICC. So these ones here add extra options to the add an activity page. So I'll just click on them for now, and I'll go and had an activity on this course. Oh. That's happened because demo.moodle.net gets refreshed every hour, and it happens that I'm doing it at 3 o'clock. So what I've just done there has just been refreshed. So basically, you'd make those changes, and in the editing page of the SCORM, you have those extra options other than the file picker. So the file picker appears there, and there's a drop list above the file picker, and it says select one of these options. And I'll just run through those other options now as well. So uploaded package is just the file picker. External package type, which becomes one of those drop-down list items, allows the teacher to enter a URL, like an http://www.mymoodlesite.com, that links directly to an IMS manifest file. SCORM packages contain traditionally a zip file, and inside that zip file is this important file called the IMS manifest.xml file, and that basically provides all the information to Moodle about what is the first bit of content I need to load, and what are the other bits of information I need to know about this course. So that links to all of the other content inside that zip file. What you can do is you can have a directory on a server somewhere, well, on your server, I'd define that slightly better, that has all of your SCORM packages extracted into folders. So you don't have them in zip files. So if you're using that same SCORM package in multiple courses, then you just link to the same location, and when you update that location, it updates everywhere else that you've got on the site. The only problem with this particular type, is that it only works if the base URL to the IMS manifest is the same as your Moodle site. So if you have this is your Moodle site, moodle.org, this would have to be a similar URL. If this URL here was different, and the base URL was different, you had myothermoodle.org, then this would fail. And the reason that fails is because browsers or internet browsers have security settings inside them that block communication between two separate domains. So if you've got moodle.org over here and mymoodlesite.org over here, those two, and you've loaded moodle.org in your browser, this browser window can't communicate with this website over here because that would be a security issue. Because if you've logged into this site and you're sharing personal information with this site, then potentially that other information could be shared with this other site. So your browser blocks that and prevents it from working. So this isn't always very useful, this method, and isn't used very often. So leaving it by default turned off makes sense. Downloaded package type's a bit different. This allows you to have a SCORM package anywhere. You can have it on an external website, you can have it on your website. Because it's a zip package, Moodle will download that package and store it locally and then run it locally. It's not trying to run it from this external website, it's taking a copy of that file and storing it locally. It's important to note there's another setting in the settings page when you're adding a SCORM package to Moodle called update frequency, and that sets how often Moodle should go and check that URL to see if there's a new version. And you can set that to say update every time someone opens the SCORM, which is a performance hit. Or you can say update it overnight, which is normally enough. You know, it just runs at 12 o'clock at midnight and checks to see if there's a new version. And it may just be a spelling change or a bit of a file change. So normally that's okay. But it's important to say that the URL has to be accessible to your web server. So if you've got a file on your desktop and you've got a path to that, you can't link to the file on your desktop. It has to be on a web server somewhere that's accessible. If that makes sense. Come and ask me later to clarify some stuff. AICC URL. This is a fast, easy way of connecting to AICC aviation skills content. Instead of having to have a package file, you basically just get given a URL by the content provider, and you just put that URL into your site, and it just works. And it's easier than having to use a zipped AICC package. It's just a simpler method. And leaving it off by default makes sense, because unless you've got lots of aviation content or you've got a contractor doing that. IMS package type is another item on that settings page, which I don't think works and shouldn't be there, so there's a bug in the tracker to remove it. 1.9 had this concept of a repository called the IMS repository, that allowed you to store extracted SCORM packages and manage them in almost like a repository, but after the conversion from 1.9 to Moodle 2 and the change in the file structure, that code was mostly removed, and we left some functionality in there so that if you upgraded a site that had IMS packages, then those IMS packages would still work, but I don't know if it even did work and whether those packages broke anyway. I don't know. I didn't hear from anyone using it. It wasn't very well documented as a feature. It wasn't implemented completely, and so I don't think anyone was really using it. So it didn't matter that we removed it. So future options. The new file picker in Moodle 2.4 allows linking, or is it 2.3? 2.3 or 2.4 allows linking of files, but the SCORM module doesn't sort of allow that. So that means that when you're adding, using the file picker to select a file, there's an extra option there to say choose an alias or select an alias or a link. And if you click on that, when you update that file in the external space or the repository, Moodle will automatically find that file and use it. What we're also hoping to do is allow you to use something a bit more like that old IMS repository system, where you have a file system repository. A file system repository is basically a directory of files on your server, and you could have those in an extracted zip state, so you could have a whole lot of SCORM packages in that file system repository, just looking like a normal folder on your desktop, with all of the SCORM packages unzipped, and then you could select an IMS manifest file from within that extracted space. And what that means is that if you have SCORM packages that share content, you could have a single space that uses relative linking to use on your single file. So if you've got a standard CSS file that does your layouts for all your SCORM packages, you could have one location for that CSS file and then just update that one location and have it update all of your SCORM packages. But that's future planning, and I do have a couple of clients that are possibly funding this, so it might be Moodle 2.6. SCORM attempts versus entries. This is one of the most important things about SCORM that is very difficult to understand. When you enter a SCORM, there's two terms. You have attempts and you have entries. SCORM's designed to allow someone to enter a SCORM, exit, and then come back to where they came from before. But it's all within the same attempt. So they have one attempt, but they're coming in and using that attempt, making some work, and then they're going away and they're having a coffee, and they're coming back to their computer and they're going back into that SCORM. They're still using that same attempt. Even though they're entering it a second time, that's not a second attempt, it's just the same attempt. So, and a new attempt is only available for a user if the SCORM package sets this particular value to completed, passed or failed. And if it sets those values, it lets the learner create a new attempt inside that SCORM. So if you get a grade, you know, the student goes in and gets a grade, you get 60%, and then they leave and they come back, they're still in the same attempt, they get 70%. Moodle will only record that 70% mark. Or if they come back and get 30%, it will say 30% is their mark, unless they create a new attempt, in which case it will keep the old grade, and the new grade will become a new entry in the gradebook. So it's a bit difficult to understand, and that attempt is only available if the package sets that particular parameter. And not all SCORM packages do that. When people create SCORM packages, they can use an authoring package, they can do it themselves, they can use some tools just to write their own thing, and it may not always do that correctly. So it can be difficult. So what we do is we have a number of settings to allow you to control the behaviour in Moodle. And some of these break SCORM compliance or the SCORM specification, but they are what you expect as teachers that this particular package would operate like. So these are the particular ones. We'll just run through those as well. So the display attempt status. This is really useful for trying to find out what went wrong. This displays a summary of a user's grade, how many attempts they've had, but it displays it to the student. It doesn't display it to the teacher. So it's a nice way of saying you've attempted this, not entered this. You've attempted this 4 times. The grade that you've been given is an average of those grades or a sum of those grades, and this is the grade you have in the gradebook. So it shows the student how the final grade was achieved. They might think, well, I entered it 5 times and I got 100% the first time and 20% the second time and 30% the second time, but it's only created 1 attempt. So that can be quite confusing. So display attempt status just allows them to show that extra information. Number of attempts. This controls how many attempts can be created, not how many times they can enter. So if you want to let them create 10 attempts to have 10 entries in the grading page for SCORM, then you can set it to 10 or 1 or unlimited. Force completed. Some SCORM packages, as I said before, don't set that parameter correctly. So for those packages, we have this extra option that says force it complete. It only works though if your package doesn't set the value. If your package sets the value, then this gets ignored basically because it overrides. Lock after final attempt. This doesn't work completely. You have to be careful about this because if the last attempt wasn't complete, passed or failed, or the last re-entry, then it will allow them to keep re-entering that attempt until they get a complete passed or failed status. So if your SCORM package never does that, then it will never actually lock anything. And locking after final attempt means don't let the user access the SCORM anymore. SCORM Spec's designed to have sort of 3 modes. You have a preview mode, a review mode, and a normal mode. And preview mode is normally used to enter the SCORM before you're actually running the test, and I don't think it's used very much. I think a lot of people disable it in the interface. Normal mode is obvious, they just go on and make grades. Review mode allows them to go and review what they did last. But all it does in Moodle is sets a flag. So in Moodle it says, we're in review mode, and passes that information to the SCORM package. So if the SCORM package has no handling about what to do when I'm told it's review mode, then it will operate normally, or it will cause other issues, so it's something that you can disable as well.
So a question about
Yep.
review mode. If you're actually a user doing the SCORM package in review mode, it means that it's not going to report your grade?
It depends on how the SCORM package is authored. It's all up to the SCORM package. All Moodle does is sets the flag and say, hey, this person's saying they just want to review it. And then it lets the SCORM package do what it wants. And if it's sending information back, it's sending information back. So it's not a very clever spec.
Are you saying too that if you set a grade or a score in SCORM, move by setting out just complete and not receiving the grade in Moodle, it won't work? So what I'm saying is,
yep.
saying in Moodle just complete. We just want to say complete because I'm talking about progressing down the page.
Yep, complete. We can get into grading in a second, and that sort of shows you how some of that works as well. So we'll talk about that in a second, definitely. And if I don't clarify that, probably ask me again, and we can go over it. So lock up the final attempt. Force new attempt allows you, normally in Moodle it gives you an extra checkbox. So when the learner enters the SCORM package, they get a checkbox that says, you've completed your last attempt, do you want to create a new one? And that's part of the SCORM spec, but doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If the previous attempt was complete, I'd expect that they create a new one. So this setting just removes that checkbox from the view, and next time the learner comes to that page, it just creates a new attempt automatically, as long as the previous attempt was completed. It's a complex, crazy spec, so don't worry if some of this is getting a bit crazy, and just come and ask me questions. I think we covered that. So force new attempt currently has some bugs in the tracker. So if you're using force new attempt, it's good just to keep an eye on some of those. The first one here, when you display, the SCORM packages have a table of contents. Some SCORM packages have a single item in that table of contents. Some packages have a large tree of content. You can display that table of contents on the SCORM view page, and if you click on the links on that tree, then force complete doesn't work. And in 2.2 there was an issue as well. If you were using student skip content structure page, then force complete wasn't working either, but it is fixed in 2.2. In the future, I want to add the ability to force a new attempt on every re-entry, which breaks the SCORM specification, but seems to make more sense to a lot of people. So if they go in once and they get a grade of 20, when they leave and come in again, we should be creating a new attempt, or at least allow the teacher to decide that they want to create a new attempt, so they have a better history of the learner's attempts rather than going back to where they came from before. So that's a new option that we're hoping to add. So grading again is quite complex because there are lots of different ways that SCORM packages can push that information back to Moodle. Some SCORM packages return a score, like 80% or 20%. Some only return a lesson status, like complete, passed, failed, and don't return a score at all. So we have to provide the ability for you to manage how grades work in the package, because we don't know how you've authored your package, we don't know anything about the package. So you need to select which grading option to use for the SCORM package. So highest grade is pretty straightforward. It just checks all of the data that's been responded from the SCORM package to find the highest grade that it returned at any point in the progress. Average grade looks at all the grades that it has returned, so it might have returned at 80%, or 60%, or 20%, all within that same attempt, and it will just average those. Some grades easy, just adds them all up. Learning objects, have I got this? No, I haven't. Yep. Learning objects is sort of based around the idea that you don't get a score. So if you've got 4 items in your table of contents, each one of those table of contents items may return from your SCORM package a complete status. Sometimes only one of those will return a complete status, sometimes all 4 will need to return a complete status, but it checks for the completion of each object and assigns a grade for each one. So if you've got 4 learning objects, or 4, they're called SCOs, S-C-O-S, or 4 items that return a completion status in your SCORM, then you set the max grade to 4 and it will automatically figure that out. There's more information on that on the wiki page, so if you're having issues around grading, have a look at the documentation site docs.moodle.org/SCORM FAQ, and under attempts grading or grading there's quite a bit of detail there. Or come and ask me if you've got specifics.
I done something just last week where the SCORM object had a maximum score of 160, yet the highest grade is sort of based around a percentage, so 100. So
raw score in SCORM spec is 0 to 100.
Okay, right.
So the SCORM specification itself says it has to be between 0 and 100.
Right.
So raw score, if that's what it's returning, is wrong in your
Yeah,
SCORM
raw
package.
score of up to 160.
Yeah, that's a problem with the SCORM package. Supposedly, according to the SCORM specification, there'd be a problem with your SCORM package. And what we try to do with Moodle is try to follow the SCORM spec, but have the ability to handle some of those edge cases when they come across. And I haven't had that many come with.
I tried to be cheeky and use fibre to try and pass a higher score, but obviously Moodle checks that.
Yeah, it does. There's in the SCORM spec it says there's a check. I think this is going to my memory banks. There's a check to see if the raw score return is 0 to 100, and if it's not, then it returns an error to the SCORM package, depending on how it's authored and stuff like that. So it's attempts grading, because we have this idea that we have multiple attempts as well. We have to handle not only the way the SCORM grades within itself on a single attempt. We have to handle how to manage the grade when there are multiple attempts, not re-entries, multiple attempts. So if they've got 2 attempts, you can select the highest, the average, or the first, or the last completed attempt. So the last completed attempt is normally the one that I see used the most, because it means that the first time the user enters the SCORM, they get a grade of 60%. Second time, they might get an 80%. Third time, they go in, they get 30%, but they haven't finished it. They exit. So instead of showing that 30%, it shows them the grade that they got on the last fully completed attempt. But it does only include completed and passed. So if they have failed that attempt, and it's responded a failed attempt status, then it won't update the grade with that particular score. And if you want more flexibility with this, let me know, because there's ability for us to add extra features to the grading relatively easy. So if there's a grading sort of method you're wanting to try and achieve with SCORM, log a bug for me in the tracker and I can have a look. Reports, there are a few reports in Moodle that show you information about the SCORM packages. This is the basic one that exists basically since Moodle 1.9. It hasn't changed much since 1.9. It lists obviously the student, how many attempts they've made, when they started them and when they last accessed, and a final score. And that's showing 142, which is interesting. So maybe I need to relook at that raw score thing. I'm pretty sure that's not right from memory, unless they've got some sort of no, see, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. I have to have a look. SCORM spec's so flipping complex. I fly the seat of my pants sometimes with some of the stuff. So normally if you click on that attempt item, it will then show more information about that particular attempt, which I think I have here. Yep. So that's clicking on a single attempt from a user. It's attempt 1 for student 4, and there's some information here. So these are the different items in the table of contents that all return different statuses. And it shows you some information about what we got there, and there's also this extra option here for track details, which shows even more SCORM information, which is really not very helpful. And there's a bunch of other information that comes from that same attempt in a format that isn't very readable. So what we did for last year is I ran a Google Summer of Code project to implement some new reports. And the first one that came out of that was this interactions report, because that was what's been requested the most. SCORM has the ability to have multi-choice questions embedded inside the SCORM and then report information about those answers back to Moodle. So this report here collects that multi-choice information in a format that you can export. So you can see that this particular user had response 0 for the question 0. They gave the answer mango. The right answer was kiwi fruit. The actual response for the question 1, which is actually question 2, because response 0 is question 1 and response, it's just starting at 0 instead of starting at 1. They gave true and the right answer was false. SCORM packages don't pass the question back to Moodle. They only pass back the answers and the identifier. So if you've got a question like, what is this fruit, which is this particular one, and there's a few pictures of the fruit and they can select which one, or type in the answer, Moodle doesn't get back the question, what is this fruit? All it gets back is the answer the student gave and the answer that was expected, and whether that was true or whether that was successful. So this report is sometimes handy, but a lot of the time you don't know what question they're actually answering.
Can you use the interactions ID?
You can use the interactions ID if you've configured it right. So that's what I was going to say next, is that in your authoring package, each question has an identifier, an ID that you type in. And sometimes people type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or they'll type in something a bit more identified to the question. So if the question is what is this fruit, they might use the words what underscore is this fruit with underscores instead of spaces. So you can pass some of that information back if you've authored your package in that way. But that's back to authoring the package. The other report that's been added is the Graph report, which is just because it was another easy thing for the Google Summer of Code student to do. He did this after the project had finished actually, so it has basically the number of participants on the side, and then it has the percentage that each participant got within this particular course. So 3 participants got 100%, 1 participant got between 50 and 60, and 2 participants got between 0 and 10. So it may not be all that useful, but it's there and available, and I think there are a few other reports like that on that page as well, so if you scroll down there's some similar sort of graphs. But let me know if you find that useful or if there are other things that you would like to add, because I'm interested in hearing about further Google Summer of Code projects, and more SCORM reports would be an easy item for a Google Summer of Code student to work on. So yeah, create a bug in the tracker or send me an email or something. SCORM Debugger. SCORM has a debugging tool that allows you to see all the communication that happens between the SCORM package and Moodle. There's lots of different calls that happen between Moodle and the SCORM, so I will go and show that to you hopefully. How are we going time-wise? 1, 2, 3, 3. I'll keep going with this and I'll demo this later if you want. But basically that SCORM Debugger displays every single call that the SCORM package makes to Moodle, and whether it was successful or failed. So if it was a failure and it passed something back to Moodle that Moodle said, no, this doesn't comply with the Moodle spec, then it throws an error and shows you some nice information. So if you're having issues with SCORM Grading or SCORM, or a particular SCORM package and you're wanting to ask for help somewhere, using the SCORM Debugger to get that full trace of what happened in that scenario is really good. So you can go into the SCORM package, do what the student did, get that SCORM Debugger's output, and then paste that into an email or to a forum post or a tracker issue, and then can help look at that for you. Forum is always really good because then it means it's not just me looking at it, it's the community that can help. So there's my email and contact. My blog has a lot of information about SCORM as well. I try to put some topical stuff up there around temps and entries and managing SCORM content. So there's a SCORM filter on there as well. So if you go to my blog and check it out, there's some other stuff. The other really important page to look at is the SCORM documentation. We've worked on trying to improve that as much as we can, especially the frequently asked questions. There's lots of content in there with a range of different scenarios. So hopefully that's been a good overview. I'm wary that we've got 5 minutes left, but I'll hang around for a good 10-15 minutes for the afternoon tea. So if you've got questions, feel free to ask them now, or disappear for morning tea, or whatever you'd like. Ask me more and I can demo some stuff. Yeah?
My Moodle page, SCORM has quite a lot of detail. Is there a way of kind of controlling what?
Yeah, that's the display attempt status setting, and the options are no, my Moodle page, SCORM entry page, or my Moodle page and SCORM entry page.
Okay,
so if you
relatively new then,
Stuart actually logged that bug. Stuart logged that bug and didn't respond after I asked him those questions. So it would have been quicker if he'd answered the questions. But in 2.2, I think it was, Ray Lawrence from, where's Ray from? England, remote? No. How to Moodle asked if we could display more information on the My Moodle page for SCORM status, so we added the feature to display it there. Then in 2.5, Stuart logged the bug and said, hey, there's way too much information, it looks crap. So we added the extra option in 2.4, I don't know, we had at some point that said only on my Moodle, only on, so you had that extra option, so it's there in newer versions but not older.
Any other questions?
I'm definitely here for longer, so